Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We appreciate the time that you take out of your busy lives and busy days for us. Today's topic is Rundeck KPIs and ROI improvement inside of your organization. So this is actually a topic that lots of our users, present and past, and even prospects have been asking about. They know the value of Rundeck. They can sort of feel it, but sometimes it's hard to make that sales pitch up inside of your organization. You know what you're improving, or a lot of times we have people higher up in the organization that want to go, hey, what is the value of doing some of the things that Rundeck brings to the table? How can we quantify that in some sort of measurable sense? So we're going to go over that topic a little bit today, high level. Obviously, your use cases will vary inside of your own environment, but I want to give you some examples and things to think about as you look at doing incident management and doing self-service operations inside of your organization. Now, you've seen this before. There's 1,001 messages that have been coming to you just in the last week and over your entire career telling you, oh my God, the cost of downtime and how to measure it. And each minute of downtime costs you X or Y, depending upon what industry you're in, and it's terrible and it's horrible. I'm not going to rehash that in this presentation. You already know it. But what we find interesting is that most of that conversation is downstream from the incident itself. And that doesn't invalidate it. In fact, that is the number one thing. What does downtime cost you per minute, per hour, per year? And how can you make it better? And that's still important, but there are other things going on inside of it that are a little bit upstream from it, and that's the cost inside of it and the incident itself. And so today I want to focus on what that actual full cost of incident is, not just downtime. I don't want to talk about your RTOs or RPOs. You know all those things. But what goes into an incident? And what are people doing inside of your organization? So there are some numbers that are reported back to us from Rundeck users, just like you. And in fact, if you have different numbers that you think are higher or lower, or what your experience has been, please reach out to us. We love to hear from our users and understand what's going on inside of their environment. But here's a sneak peek of some statistics that we actually get from real Rundeck users. And I'll go over some of those a little bit later, but let's talk about where time wasting is going on. So that lean classification that talks to the IT processes that we help improve, the defects, waiting, motion, skills inside of your organization. You know that time is money. Captain Obvious can tell you that. But there's all those repetitive issues, correcting work, things that should have been automated, waiting for people. That's extremely expensive. Every time an incident is open, it doesn't matter what you're doing or who you are inside of an organization. When you open a ticket and you wind up in a queue, you're waiting, and maybe somebody's waiting for you to wait. Interruptions, there's costs to interruptions. There's some statistics behind that. And most of this boils up into what we can call toil inside of your organization. So if I look at a typical incident, this is an outage, something's happened, your PagerDuty alert or whatever alerting goes off, and whether it's 3:15 a.m. or 3:15 p.m., you can decide which one of those is more painful to you. You've got people screaming at you, there's a problem, there's an alert, what's wrong? You have all of these skills that are disparate across your organization. You got people working on actual projects. You've got, again, more waiting, more queuing, moving over to different tools, and you've got to bring in the experts to figure out what's going on. You have to bring in the experts to figure out how to fix it. So the question is, how do you communicate? How do you coordinate these things? Do you have to go and decipher the wiki to use a skill you haven't used in 3 years? Is there some ad hoc tool or script that you didn't know how to use? You're escalating. There's issues going on inside of your organization. And these incident management things come up inside of there. Maybe you don't have access to that thing, even you knew how to fix it. Maybe there's some service control that you don't have access to. Maybe some of those runbooks aren't actually automated. I should draw a line through automated. We've got a runbook for this incident, but it's in that bottom file cabinet drawer that nobody's opened for the past several years. This all boils back to actually being toil in your organization. Like I said, people are money. And time is money, costing you remediation time and actual people time inside of the organization. So how do we address this? We think there are 3 major categories to addressing this. And obviously it's repair, your ability to get back to what was working beforehand. But before you can do that, while you're getting that Slack notification or emails or phone calls, hey, when's it going to be fixed? The thing you're doing at 3:15 a.m. or 3:15 p.m. is trying to figure out just what's gone wrong. So you've got those procedures that you roll out of bed or out across your office chair to do some diagnostics. You repair it, and then there's reporting. We think reporting is very important not just to say what happened inside of the organization, not to keep monitoring the current state, but when we put all of that remediation into a central place with an organized set of tools and runbooks, we can learn from that remediation procedure so we can get better at it in the future. So I'm going to go over some examples, a little bit of arithmetic on the screen. In my company, let's talk about 10 FTEs, and they're organized up against different applications inside of the organization. So I got 3 apps per FTE. I'm going to talk about maybe a 2-hour MTTR. So if I take those 2 hours times 10 FTEs, that's 200 hours per incident per app. But let's say we've got some time waste. And in this example, what we're doing is we're trying to take out that wasted time of changing context, of moving to different tools, of handing things off to people. So if I got a 20% waste of time, I get another 40 hours times a particular head count. That's obvious. That's almost an entire head count. But let's say there's 10 incidents per year per app in a medium-sized organization, which again, I think is really, really low. These are very conservative numbers. I've lost at least half a head count inside of this organization just because I've got time waste inside of this organization. I'll pause for a moment and mention that these examples are coming from an ROI toolkit that's available to all of our ambassadors here at Rundeck. We'd be happy to go over some of those things. Feel free to reach out and contact us. This is just one of 3 or 4 different ways we can measure ROI against Rundeck. Another one might be ticket elimination. I think this is one of my favorites, where what we're doing is we're trying to get people out of queues, which are extremely common inside of an organization. So again, I'm going to use 10 FTEs. I'm going to use, again, what I think is a very conservative number of $65 an hour per FTE, or about $130K a year. And we're going to estimate that people wait about 7 hours in a queue for an 8-hour MTTR. So if we use 5 tickets and we're talking about half an hour of lost engineer time context switching. Now, what I mean by context switching is there's plenty of evidence. There was even a study done by UC Irvine that says it takes at least 23 minutes for the average person, for the average interruption, to refocus and to get your head back in the game after an interruption. So here again, we're talking about waiting in a queue and trying to pull back from interruptions inside of your organization. So if I multiply that out, I'm going to wind up with 126 grand a year, and that's a mere 5 tickets per week. I don't know anybody who has that few tickets per week, but I'm going to lose. If I do that, that's something that puts me at 1 entire head count of people in time wasted inside of an organization just at 5 tickets per week. What if you had 50 tickets a week? What if you had 100 tickets a week? You know what you have inside of your organization. At 100 tickets per week, again, those conservative estimates for time, that's $2.6 million worth of people not really doing anything, wasting time. But back to those numbers from earlier. Remember I gave you a preview from actual numbers we're getting from Rundeckers out there in the organization. What we're trying to do is resolve an issue as quickly and as effectively as possible. And so we've got automated and standard operating procedures. That takes all the guesswork out. It takes the inconsistency out, and it takes the slowness out of incident response. So we can do investigatory actions. We can do health checks and remediation actions without having to escalate to somebody else. But it's also important to automatically capture the record of actions taken for reviewing that incident, like I mentioned earlier. So mistakes, unintended consequences. We've got people out there, our customers, telling us they're able to eliminate 90% of the cost of repetitive and known problems by democratizing both skills and access inside of the organization. We're also being told by Rundeck users that they're being able to eliminate, and they're measuring this, 30% of outage time by running those incidents through Rundeck for incident response versus when it wasn't before. And these are numbers you can put right into your organization. They're telling us we're getting 60% of the total time cost to self-inflicted and prolonged incidents. So that's error correction, error avoidance inside of the organization. And more numbers saying that 15% of total labor efficiencies have come back into the organization, with work incidents being more efficient and being able to solve those things a little bit quicker. That all add up inside of the organization. And we've got a beautiful article about this on our website. So as you can see, to sort of wrap things up here, time is money, obviously, but these things are upstream from even that outage. You're wasting expensive engineering time. You're bringing toil inside of the organization, and that's toil in that classic Google SRE sense, where these are things that should have been automated, they should have been repeatable, and they're getting in the way of your engineers being able to make tomorrow better than today. So what should you do? Try to multiply that expertise inside of your organization. These three things on the left, I think, are places where you can really do it. What you want to do is encapsulate all of that knowledge as code inside of an organization that allows people to actually operate versus escalate. And whether you're moving horizontally in an engineering organization or you've got tier 1, tier 2 people who always escalate these same issues, maybe you can get some of that incident remediation, some of those fixes into Runbook so they can do it themselves. Which leads in a second point, you could connect all those people who are closest to the problem with that expertise without having to open up any sort of security controls, compliance, or again, interrupting your engineers. And then you can let your experts encapsulate their knowledge using their preferred methods and their preferred tools. So as we've always said in the DevOps community, let people use the tools and the procedures they think are best to make themselves most productive. So whether you're using Ansible or Terraform or Jenkins or Puppet or Chef, bring those tools back up behind Rundeck and make them democratized and available inside of your organization. And we think you'll see a very powerful return on investment by making these changes inside of your organization. So I promised you this one would be really quick today. I wanted to get some ideas up inside of your head about how you can see ROI in your organization, whether you're just doing it inside of your level or you're trying to convince people that you really do see money come back, time come back from doing incident management and self-service operations inside of your organization. We encourage you to reach out to your representative from Rundeck. We can go over those things and use real numbers from your team inside of Rundeck. So I'll leave you with some resources. I'm also going to post these up into the chat of this webinar. So you've got some URLs. We do have an article, kind of a synopsis of the talk I just gave right now out at rundeck.com/Rundeck ROI. I'll give you a link to the Carnegie Mellon study. There's an NYT article about the cost of interruptions, where those come from, how people are trying to fix them up. I encourage you to also look at a really good example of incident management where we've teamed up with our friends over at PagerDuty, which allows you to take those notifications, those incidents, and actually act upon them immediately, even automating some of that diagnostic so that when you look at an alert, you're not engaging that when you finally get to it. It's already been run from you, takes over from that dogpiling situation, people overlapping and bumping each other with skills. And if you have any other questions, input, comments, or you want to go over any of this, rundeck.com, contact us. It's right there on our front page. And I thank you for joining us today.